Thanks for joining us once again for the RacketBoy.com podcast. This podcast will go online somewhere probably within the next month. We have two great guests in James Rolfe and Brett Vanderbroek. We, of course, just saw, again, for our listening audience, we just saw them screen their film, Follow That Marshmallow. Just to briefly introduce himself, for someone who's never heard of The Angry Video Game Nerd, how do you explain what the show is and why you do it?
A 30-year-old disgruntled gamer who is still pissed off about the games from his childhood youth.
And you mentioned on the site that you have been doing reviews of games and just playing with the camera in general since your youth. Do you remember when you first started getting interested in using a camera and what brought that on in your life?
Yeah, it started with just audio. It was just an audio recorder, and I would record my friends talking about things, and we would use sound effects, and we would speak in different character voices, and we would kind of just tell audio stories. And then I was also, kind of at the same time, was doing stories with just pictures also. So I was taking still photographs, and we would be acting out things and wearing costumes, and it would just be like visual stories. I would put them all together in a photo album, and then write little captions next to them to explain what's happening. And that also kind of taught me editing a little bit too, because I'd decide, okay, what order am I putting these pictures in the photo album? So I was doing just audio and then doing just visual, and then at some point it combined when I found the video camera, and I was like, wow, this is like, I can record picture and sound at the same time, and movement also. And then it just kept on going. I sort of took over the family video camera, and then it just picked up from there.
How old were you when you were doing this, and at what point did you maybe start to think about doing it beyond just a hobby around the house or with friends in the backyard and actually pursuing it as something more serious?
I started taking classes for animation originally, because I used to draw a lot too, and I was interested in drawing comics, and then I thought it was cool to make a move with animation, and the classes were really expensive, and I think I lost interest during one of them, and I just thought it was too time consuming and decided to move to live action. And I think my parents were pissed because that was an expensive class, and I didn't really keep going with it. And then after that, I was always like, okay, I'm just going to stick to whatever I do. And then I just stuck to live action, and that's been my favorite medium to tell a story.
How old were you when you were doing these sort of audio recordings, putting with pictures? How old were you when you started using a camera, and how old were you when you thought about or started taking classes? I'm just trying to get a sense of prehistory before The Angry Video Game Nerd.
Between age like maybe 4 to like 12. I mean, it's all escalated from there. But by like 9, I was using a video camera. Actually, I used Super 8 before that, so I actually did shoot silent films. Probably by 9, I was using the camera frequently, but I still wouldn't call anything I did a movie because it was just crap. But then like by like 1991, yeah, I was like 11, I think, by the time I started trying to make them more into narrative films. And then 12, like 13, I started taking some animation classes. 17, I was taking lots of extracurricular classes, like college classes, like on summers and Saturdays for screenwriting, film history, videography, and editing. So that's about the ages. And the video game thing was kind of happening at the same time. Like I got a Nintendo when I was 8. Recording game footage was always something I did too. I used to point the camera at the screen and commentate over it. So you can say the seeds of the nerd were planted back then as well.
What for you makes a good subject for a film? What kinds of projects attract you?
Things that have been done, but things that haven't been done. Like genre things, but just doing a twist on a genre. Take something that's recognizable and then change it around. Are
there certain directors or certain either short form or long form films that you look to that have inspired you in your own project?
Inspirations, yeah, I can go forever. Some of my favorite films, I'll just list some as It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, King Kong, Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, Rocky, Gremlins. I like the Hitchcock films, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. There's a lot of inspirations. They really came from all over the place. But I was really into like genres as well. I like just horror genres, martial arts genres, science fiction, whatever. I just watched anything I could get my hands on, because it was tough back then to get your hands on stuff. It wasn't as easy as it is now with the internet and DVDs and everything. You felt lucky when you found a movie that you think, that's cool, or that nobody else, told you about.
how do you plan out your shots? Where do you look to for ideas there?
I'm not aware of it a lot of times, like the styles. I just let it go a lot of the times and just see what happens. It's really hard to articulate like what it is that I'm trying to do, because that's kind of like why I went to film, was because it just speaks for itself. When it's on the screen and you watch it, it's like, there you go, that's what you meant. And then I try, because I'd always find myself in school or somewhere or in a circle of friends trying to explain an idea, and it's kind of tough. But then then I go make it, and then I show it, and it's like, oh, there you go, and then you can just see it, and it's right there, and then it makes so much sense. And I think that's what I liked about it.
You of course took this sensibility from working on other films into the Angry Video Game Nerd series that you've been working on for about 7 years now, is it?
Well, the first Nerd episodes were in 2004, but that was before YouTube. So I'd say 2006 was really when it actually got known.
One of the things, of course, that you mentioned on your website on the fact, which I would encourage everyone to take a look at, is that you accepted donations of games to review. And obviously, looking at the videos, you have quite the extensive library of your own. But I'm curious, how many games have you had sent to you? How often do you choose one? What percentage of your collection would you say has been donated under the hopes that maybe it'll get reviewed? And maybe talk about that a bit.
We tell fans also that like there's no guarantee if you send a game it's going to get reviewed, but people are really generous and they send them anyway. So people have been really great with that. Everybody just wants to help out, or even if they just see their game in the background maybe somewhere, because it's all there in the room. I just cover all the walls with the games. It's more than half that have been donated. I used to do a lot of eBaying and stuff, but lately, unless I'm looking for something specific, I don't actively search for games as much as I used to. Now it's usually donations, and sometimes I'll get something that I've never even heard of.
Are there certain games that you would like to review that for some reason you can't gain access to, or you just haven't had the time to get to yet?
There's a PC game called Big Rigs. And and I've seen footage of it. It's hilarious. I know it's already been done a million times. I'd still like to do it anyway. At least play it for a bit and laugh at it. It's a PC game, and I actually have no knowledge of how to run them or anything. So I'm a console guy. That's all. I just grew up with consoles. So maybe at some point. But yeah, if I were to name one game I didn't do that I think is really funny and would make a good video, it's Big Rigs.
One of the reasons that your videos are so successful is because they're quite funny. I mean, you obviously have a knack for humor as well as directing and planning these shorts. I asked you the question about, are there particular directors or films that you look to? Are there particular comedians that you look to as well to help you, think about what works in terms of timing or the content of your jokes, and where do you draw inspiration from there?
Comedians, there's probably a ton of them, but Abbott and Costello are like probably my favorite, like classic comedians. Dave Chappelle, genius. I'm definitely forgetting like a bunch of them, but yeah, sure. There's lots of people who I think are really funny that I've drawn some kind of inspiration from.
One of the reasons I've been asking you these questions about inspiration is because your show has obviously, The Angry Video Game Nerd, become an inspiration for many other game review shows. How many of these have you seen? Have you watched? What's your opinion on the ways in which your show has become what it's become for other people looking to do the same thing?
I don't know. I mean, there's plenty of games out there, so I encourage people to just do it. Just play them and review them or whatever, because there's so many games. Like, find your own style. I don't really get to see much of them because I just don't have time, and I'd like to. Originally, I did. I used to watch some of them in the early days, because I think the first time I saw somebody like do a review that was like in the style of mine, it was like hilarious. I was really flattered, and like he said my name in it too. He was like, "Oh yeah, Angry Video Game Nerd. You should be happy that I did this one, so you don't have to." He was a guy named he went by the name Eric Man Super. He did a Where's Waldo one. I remember it was very early on. It was like 2006, so the Nerd had already been going for like maybe a year by then, and I never would have thought that somebody would have like imitated it, and then I just thought it was funny, and then that actually helped me figure out what was funny about my own show. It got me like an outside perspective. Like, I didn't think I'd have the chance to actually kind of realize like, oh, okay, I get it. I understand why this is funny now. So then it was encouragement for me.
Are there others out there that you find that you say you don't watch a lot of them. Are there some that you've seen that do impress you to some extent? And whether they're not their derivative of yours, but are there other review shows that you think do something really interesting and innovative with the idea of online video review?
I'm not sure, but I mean, everybody knows me and the Nostalgia Critic are, good friends. We both watched each other's videos from a distance at first before, I knew he was a fan, because he does movies and stuff, so I'm always interested in like somebody's unique presentation of that, and like the way he does jokes are like very different than how I would do it. So it's interesting to see another take on it. But I don't get to watch much on the internet too often. I'm really like kind of under the rock with a lot of things.
So I mean, obviously, since the show has become quite successful on the web, one question I had for you is whether or not this has been something that you've been able to parlay into a full-time gig, or if you still have a daytime job of some sort. How do you deal with this as a business in any way? I
mean, a lot of it's from my website, toomanygames.com. We do merchandise on Screw Attack. I got the videos. Some of the videos are on Game Trailers and Spike. It comes from all different places. It's crazy how it has become a full gig, yeah, which is great. I did lots of corporate jobs. I was always pursuing this as a career somehow. Like I was doing, wedding videos. I was doing all kinds of jobs in the video field, and then I never would have thought it would come from video games. So if I could just go back to all those times when I was playing video games when I should have been doing my homework, it paid off.
The last question I want to ask you then, before I start talking to Brett, has to do with the project that's been in the works for some time, and that is the Angry Video Game Nerd film. And so I'll just ask you the basic question of what's the status of the film at this point, how far along is it in production, and what can you tell us about it other than what your fact says, which is to say that the fact explains that the film is going to be in the vein of Wayne's World, and that the long-anticipated review of E.T. for the 2600 will appear in the film. But beyond those two things which you've made known, what else can you tell us about the film and how far along it is?
Angry Video Game Nerd film is in pre-production. The script's been collecting dust for years, and now we finally, I'm trying to take a little of the focus on making the movie. So, because the regular episodes are so time-consuming, I need to cut back a little right now just to get this movie going forward. So we're basically just trying to figure out, like, all the bullshit that comes before making it. It's probably going to be pretty low budget, but we'll see. Like, even if I got to animate it with stick figures, I don't care. I'm going to make it, somehow. In the vein of Wayne's World is hilarious, because I was trying to explain to people that this is something very different from the episodes. It's the character, but you've never seen the character, like, outside of the nerd room, like, not very often. So you actually see the character interact with, others, and to compare that, I was like, well, Wayne's World was a show where two guys, do this thing in the basement, and that's, all there is to it, and it was just like a sketch. And then when they made it into a movie, it like opened it all up, that they got out of the room. But other than that, it doesn't have anything to do with Wayne's World. But people have blown that out of proportion, I think.
Brett Vanderbroek is, of course, an actor and filmmaker from New York City, who is probably best known for his titular role in the web series The New Adventures of Captain S. Any Captain S fans in the audience? You?
They're still around.
They're still around, right. He's currently working with X Strike Studios on a claymation web series based on Animal Crossing. They have a booth here at the convention, I believe.
Correct.
And he's also been auditioning his ass off in New York. How and when did you begin working on or in films, and what happened between that time and the creation of Captain S?
I didn't really start getting into films until I was in college. Films in the traditional sense. I started dicking around with the camera with my friend Sean when I was like 14. But what we made would be closer equated to garbage than film. He shows things that he made when he was 14 years old. I would be really embarrassed if anybody saw it. I still have it. It still exists, but it's very, 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 very bad. It wasn't until I got to college and I was a theater major, and I really thought that was the direction I was heading, was just to do theater. And then I started doing improv comedy, and through improv comedy I met the guys who would eventually go on to form X Strike Studios. who had low budget film experience, and sort of introduced me to being on camera. And just all of a sudden I was like, wow, there's acting beyond just being on stage, and the whole process of filmmaking, although it was vastly different from the process of audition or rehearsing and performing a show. Whereas the jolt you get from doing live theater is the feedback from the audience. The satisfaction of film is like it's the process. It's the putting it together, and it's all disjointed and put together in out of order pieces, and it's not till the very end that you see it all in line. You're like, wow, I can't believe that it turned out like that. It wasn't until I got to college that was when that I got into that aspect of filmmaking. Before it was just, oh, we got a video camera, let's turn it on and make funny noises.
It was at college where the seeds for Captain S were sown?
Essentially, because X-Strike and PVC are in a lot of ways connected, because Chad Williams, who created Captain S, was a co-founder of X-Strike Studios, and was also he did a campus TV show, which is where those guys kind of started to work together with cameras, and then it spawned X-Strike, which they started making video game based movies, and then we graduated and people moved, and Chad and I both ended up in New York City, and there were descendants of X-Strike, I guess you could say.
And was your original idea for the series to create, let's create a web series, or was it something different?
No, actually Captain S has a really interesting history. Chad Williams grew up as a Sega kid. He never had an NES, he had a Sega, and he created the Captain S character literally just to piss off Nintendo fans at conventions. Like, he walked around and he had this Duke Blue Devils jacket with the S on the front, and he didn't want there was Duke Blue Devil on the back, and he just covered it with a sign that said Nintendo sucks, and he walked around conventions, just to be a rabble rouser. It was in the vein of Borat, though, not like he had serious ill will against Nintendo. It was all just for the lulz.
Yeah.
And that led him to go home and sit down and make like a 5-minute video with him wearing that jacket, doing like a Captain N type scenario where he goes into a Sega game called Subterranea, and it wasn't until like 2 years later when he got to New York that he had the idea to turn it into a web series. And rather than it just being about this dick kid who hates Nintendo, we're like, well, why don't we take inspiration from our childhood? Like, we all watched a lot of campy, over-the-top Saturday morning cartoons and live-action shows, and why don't we take the era of gaming that we're sort of poking fun at, and also take inspiration from those TV shows, like Saved by the Bell, like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, like Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, like Captain N, and just put them all in a blender and have let them make babies, and that's kind of what Captain S became.
What things did you most enjoy doing while working on Captain S, and what things did you least enjoy doing?
Before Captain S, all I'd ever done is act, and then with Captain S, all of a sudden I could say that I helped write, I helped direct, be director of photography, and by the time we edited the crossover episode, I had actually helped edit too. That was the first time I ever edited anything. I don't really like directing. I think I have a hard time with vision, as it were. Like, I'm a much better collaborator than I am like being the guy in charge and being like, okay, A, you go here, B, you go here, this is what you're doing, this is what I want to see. I have a much better time with bouncing ideas back and forth off of another person, and the director is kind of like, he's at the helm of the ship, and I have a hard time with that and much responsibility in the final outcome of the film. So I think editing favorite, directing least favorite.
Captain S has been done for a while now. For people who might not know, how and why did it come to an end?
Internet fanboys made me cry. No, there was a lot of reasons why it came to an end. We were going to do a second season. We actually had funding from screwattack.com. We had scripts, but It was an overly ambitious project. The way season 1 was done was really backwards. You know, the way we did special effects was all, you know, we didn't use any After Effects. People think we use After Effects. We just used Final Cut. It was all stop motion, and it was really time consuming. And we wanted to get away from that, and we wanted to try to do things, streamline things, make things easier. But then we needed to bring other people on who knew how to do these things, who knew how to do CG, and were After Effects wizards, and we wanted to pay actors and then there was, you know, there were legal caveats like, you know, we needed to have it done by a certain date so that they could release DVDs in time for Black Friday. And then, like, as you know, as all this is coming together and we're getting closer and closer to these deadlines, and we're going, you know, this isn't going to happen. At the end of the day, it was like every time we would go over one hurdle, there'd be another one, and it got to a point where it wasn't fun anymore. And it was like, this is so daunting. And we weren't even happy with the scripts. Like, we revised the script so many times, and we were still kind of like, these just are not as good as we want them to be, and we don't want to release a product to the world and go, here it is, you've waited 2 years for it, and it sucks.
You're here with X Strike to work on, or to talk about, I guess, this film you're doing regarding claymation and Animal Crossing. Can you tell folks a little bit about what that project is and when we might expect to see something from that?
We did one episode of it. Garen DeMarco created it. He turned Animal Crossing into essentially a horror theme. He took the idea of Animal Crossing, which is this cute, funny, bright, colorful game with cheerful music, and just turned it into this dark, twisted. You know, this guy has no idea what's going on, and they won't let him leave. You know, and they're making him work, and it's a really funny idea. And the first episode is done. We finished it last year. If anybody has ever done stop motion animation, it's really time consuming. He's building models, and he's doing it all by himself, building, shooting, and then he hands it off to me, and I edit it. So, you know, I can't help him because, you know, he's the one doing all the model building and everything, so we don't really know when more episodes will be done. Maybe later this year, but I don't want to make promises.
One of the things you've been busy with is what we just saw, Follow That Marshmallow, and this is, of course, not the first collaboration of any kind that you've done with James. And so I'll go ahead and turn this over to both of you now, so some questions for both of you about the documentary and your work together. And the obvious question is, you know, how did you become acquainted with one another?
I think the internet will have you believe that I put a gun to James' head and made him come down to New York and shoot the thing with us. But no, it was just, you know, we were both on Screw Tech at the time. You were also talking about, you were like, oh yeah, I remember I did Rocky Jump the Park Bench, and I kind of want to do something like that with Ghostbusters. You know, would you be interested?
Yeah, that's how I remember it too. I did the Rocky one, and then I was actually kind of tossing between a Ghostbusters tour and a tour of the Blob. And I actually started the Blob first, which is called Blob Town. It's done now, but that was like 3 years in the making. But in the meantime, I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this Ghostbusters one, because right now I'm like having, you know, conflicting schedules and stuff with the Blobs. I was like, all right, let me just do the Ghostbusters one. We shot in like 3 days or something.
3 long days.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we didn't have a lot of time. I mean, I had a full-time job. You have a full-time job in making nerd videos, and so it was literally like, I think you came down on a Friday night. We watched the movie. We wrote a lot of things down. We got an idea for that first scene. So like, oh, okay, let's start it out, like, pretend like they're going to the paranormal studies at Columbia, and they brought a documentary team, and that's not real, so what are we gonna do? Let's go to Ghostbusters locations. But yeah, we literally only had, you know, 3, I think it was a long weekend, because it was like Saturday, Sunday, Monday, or maybe it was even just Saturday, Sunday. But it was like, we woke up early in the morning, like, we just bang, 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 like, just, you know, had the subway map in one hand and the iPod with both movies loaded up in the other.
Tripods under our arms, you know.
Yeah, we had a real small team. One day, Chad Williams helped us shoot. The other day, Dan Caleb Glick helped us shoot. And my longtime friend, Matt, was a trooper and held the boom mic for us.
And where did you get the information about, I mean, you live in New York, but I mean, did you know, for example, like where the firehouse was, or some of the things, everyone knows where the Statue of Liberty is, or some of the museums might be well known, but some of the things you went and found were perhaps a little more obscure. How did you find those places?
There's a lot of information online about where the locations are, but we always wanted to confirm them first to make sure that they're, they're right. In fact, one of them that we shot, we didn't actually use in the video. That could have been an outtake. It wasn't in there, but
We're
it was
embarrassed by it, though.
Yeah, I guess we're embarrassed by it, but who cares? Whatever.
Wrong.
Yeah, we were just wrong. It was a subway. There's like, you see it in the movie for like 2 seconds. There's like a subway entrance, and you see the ghost like come out. It's that one with like those long arms, and we were there. I think we were like on the opposite side of the block or something. We were at the wrong one.
No, we were actually about 80 blocks too far north. And I was particularly embarrassed because I remember while you were editing it and you emailed me and you were like, oh, we got to cut this scene, we're wrong on it. And then you told me where it actually was, and I went back and I watched the scene and went, oh my God. As soon as you said it was the City Hall, our train stop, and as soon as you said that, I looked at it, I went, I used to get off at that stop to go to work. And I just looked at it and I was like, I should have known that.
Since you've both done stuff obviously independently beforehand, what did you learn from one another?
I mean, I'm always impressed with James as like a one-man wrecking crew. Like the fact that he films and edits, virtually by himself, and that was always impressive. And his organization, like I remember him showing me his editing station, and just like he had 2 monitors, and like one was. Everything was just immaculately organized, and I looked at the way I edited, and it's just like, I have to use the search function anytime I want to find anything, and it's not in any conceivable order, and he's just all right there, and he's just a workhorse. He edited that when he said, okay, I'm gonna start. He's like, one day he emailed me, he's like, okay, I'm gonna start editing now, and I think it was like a week later, he's like, okay, I think I'm done, and like I had been working on, like I had done a few things, like I had worked on the credit sequence, and that, and I had started to put a few things together, and the amount of time it took me to do that, he had edited the film, basically, and I was like, well, okay, I guess we'll go with what you do, except the credit sequence, but that was really it. So I'm always impressed with, he makes me want to work harder. That's I don't know. I don't know if you can answer this question. I don't think I've taught you anything.
Well, I think you handle the technical stuff really for shooting. So the hard drive that you're using to like capture the footage, like we were shooting right to like a hard drive, and like I didn't really do a lot of HD stuff at the time, and actually still don't, because I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm not very progressive right now because I'm doing like web stuff. When I'm in movie mode, when I'm doing like a film, then I go into that. But yeah, like a lot of the stuff, like it was kind of like your decision. Let's use a boom mic, and I was like, well, is that the best way to do it? And it worked. That worked really good. And I remember, I'm trying to remember right now. But do you remember what happened with the hard drive? There was like we had a technical problem one day, and we had the most insane day to get this thing working. I think we had
It was a FireWire cable we were missing.
Yeah, we were like missing a FireWire cable, and we had like a 6-pin to 4-pin, and we needed a 4-pin to 4-pin or something like that.
This is all really interesting.
Yeah.
But we had the wrong one, bottom line, and we ended up having to go to Radio Shack. And like, nobody has a car, so I think I had to take a cab to go, we had to use our phones to like find the nearest Radio Shack, and that's a pitfall of not shooting on tape.
Have you thought about the people actually who produce Ghostbusters? Have you thought about showing this to them and saying, hey, next time you release the 8th edition of Ghostbusters on DVD, wouldn't this be a cool special feature? Or have you thought about life for this beyond just a web video or something to show at cons?
I haven't been like trying to get that to happen, but if I would love that. That'd be great. So, but
Do they know of it?
Ivan Reitman, if you're here, we'd like to put this on the yeah, I think I would love for that. I don't know that they would be interested, but who knows?
Put up your hand if you have a question. Let us know. Yeah, right here.
You of course go back to the past to play the shitty games that suck ass, but is there ever a cutoff point for what you review, and is there anything at that cutoff point that you've gotten constant requests for?
Okay, like just too new. I could say a cutoff point, but I think I've broken it before. So like there have been like exceptions, like you might see a newer one, like Superman 64. That was like 1999, So that might be one of the newer ones. Also, one of my Spider-Man videos, I think I went to like a Game Boy Advance like version of Spider-Man 2. So that was in there somewhere. So every once in a while, there's something new. The cutoff for me, I'd always just think is like N64, PlayStation, like around there. I've only done one PlayStation game, I think.
Independence Day, I think.
That's it, yeah. So I'd say that's the cutoff, yeah.
The question is, why don't you review ET? Is it to screw with everybody and piss them off?
It's the movie. There, that's the answer, basically.
You've reviewed 32X the Jaguar. This person likes those reviews quite a bit. Do you plan to do other console reviews in the future?
I like to do TurboGrafx 16, Neo Geo, but it's kind of tough for some of those because I don't really have a lot to say, a lot of negative stuff to say at least. It's always better when it's just negative because that's kind of what the show is based off of, just negativity. I've done most of the really bad consoles that I've wanted to do.
Are you using beer or water in those bottles when you make the videos?
Some of the recent ones are water or iced tea, because when I end up having to really drink beer in it, then like I'll have to do another take, and then because I have to get the whole monologue right, and so I'll do another take, and then it starts adding up. So I think there's a noticeable difference of quality if I'm drinking real alcohol. So I just don't do it. I don't drink when I do the videos anymore.
Do you actually play the drums? Because there's one in the background on your videos.
Yes, I do. Not very well, but yeah.
Any chance you'll do some drumming in a video in the future?
Probably not. just a fun thing. Oh, okay. All right.
I actually have a question for each of them.
Here you go.
I knew she was going to do that. So.
Okay.
Okay, so the first question is for Brett. You majored in theater. Do you ever do musical theater? Do you ever sing? Would you sing something for us now?
I won't sing something for you right now because I don't sing very well. I did do musical theater when I was in high school, but it was always character pieces where it's much more important that you can carry the weight of the character than you can sing well. But I still do occasionally do theater. I did a small play in New York that ended in April. So yes, I still do some theater, but mostly film.
Does James's wife or family get upset when he makes a mess with peanut butter or other things?
Well, my family doesn't have to deal with it anymore. My wife does. I mean, yeah, I've had a long history of, destroying stuff. I think we destroyed, like, a wheelbarrow in a martial arts fight in Kung Fu Werewolf from Outer Space. I've thrown dummies out windows and stuff like that. So, yeah, I've done stuff that, their parents weren't too happy about. And nowadays, now I have my own basement, so it doesn't really affect my wife too much, but yeah, she'll come down. It's like, yeah, whatever. All right, there's a mess. I'm still finding like I'll find like a little piece of green glass. I'm like, oh, what's this? Oh, that's like a Rolling Rock bottle I accidentally broke in like, geez, whatever video that was. So yeah, there's always stuff being broken and like fake shit all over the floor, everything.
Do you like the top loader NES or the toaster better?
I gotta say, Richard Deleuze did a great job with that Nintoaster. It works better than any of the other toasters any of the other Nintendos I've ever played. Yeah.
Another toaster just ruined the games.
What's next for Monster Madness for James?
Do I want to reveal it? No, I'm not. I won't reveal it, but I'll say like it's going to be a lot of. It's going to be a mix of like old and new stuff, kind of mostly old stuff, and it'll kind of repeat on some topics I addressed in the first Monster Madness, but it'll expand on it. So it's a pretty good one. It's a basic one. It's not going to be as big as last year's where I had like the campfire and everything. There's not going to be a lot of production in this one, but it's going to be pretty much just straight on, just reviews. In your film, which was your favorite location, and which Ghostbusters film do you prefer?
My favorite location was probably the reservoir because, not necessarily from an aesthetic standpoint, but from the homework James and I had to do, and it was really fun to walk around and literally be like, you see that mark? That mark is in the movie. You see that? That's in the movie. And like we like
I can't believe we found that.
Yeah, that was the thing. Is like that reservoir is it's over a mile around, so it's a lot of ground to cover, and we really had, I mean like and when we discovered that we were definitely right, like 99.9% right, you know, because everything matched up. Sometimes, you know, even on the more obvious locations, we're like Raise a Cult, we're like, doesn't look anything like the movie, but this is supposed to be it. But with that, we weren't quite sure where to look, but we found it, and that was really satisfying. As for the movie, I mean, you got to go with the first one. The second one was fun, and I really liked it as a kid. But I have to say, as an adult, like, it's just not quite as good. Like, it was fun to see them all together again, and you know, Vigo was a really scary character that they added. But as far as a film goes, the first one is just way more solid.
I guess I have to agree. The Reservoir, that was fun when we matched that up. Off the top of my head, I mean, yeah, the Firehouse was fun. I mean, I guess you have to put that up there because that was like that's the one spot that, you know, if you're gonna see one Ghostbuster spot, you want to see the Firehouse, and it was great that, you know, those guys were out there hanging out.
That German guy that was. There was this German guy. I mean, you see him in the movie, and he's destroying Florence and whatever. And but he was so excited to see James. Like, can you imagine? You're this guy. You're a German tourist, and you come to New York City, and you decide that day, at that moment of your life, to go to the Ghostbusters Firehouse, and who shows up but James fucking Rolfe? And this guy, I thought he was gonna poop himself. Like, he was just like, oh, like the cigarette fell out of his mouth, and he was just like, you know, like broken English, just fanboy orgasm all over James. It was a sight to behold, and we have it all on tape, which is great.
I also like that all those guys were all very different. It was really cool to meet them there. A better movie, 1 or 2. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to say 2, you know, but 2's still good. It's still good. It's just not as good as the first one.
I don't know where else we can stick this in because it's, you know, people are asking questions. But as far as we're talking about locations, we wanted to bring up that the Tavern on the Green location. There was a funny little moment during, you know, here we are talking about how successful this restaurant is, and, you know, going on and on about it, and then like we're editing it, and I read on the internet one day that it's closing at the end of 2009. I was like, Jesus. So I emailed him, and I was like, James, we gotta like mention this in the movie that it's, you know, here we are talking about how successful it is, and it's closed. Like, we look stupid. And so he's like, okay, like I'll put in like a subtitle or something, and he showed me something, and I was like, no, I have this idea in my head. You know, in documentaries when somebody dies and they do this thing for them where it's like the music gets sappy and they slow it down and it's black and white. And he goes, I know exactly what you mean. And like 10 minutes later, he sent me this thing. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what.
Yeah, that's something that happens when you do these kind of location tours. I mean, you're doing them just to see how different these locations are after how long, like anywhere like 30, 20 years, whatever. And now that they're, you know, there's a little distance between them now, things are changing. Like the Rocky documentary I did, Rocky Jumped the Park Bench, the Philadelphia Spectrum does not exist anymore. Where Rocky fought Apollo Creed, they tore it down. And so some people have come to Philly and they use my video as like a guide, kind of, and then they're not going to find the Spectrum because it's not there anymore. So, I mean, we're not going to go back to re-edit old videos. I mean, some of them I'll leave a little note like on the page where the video is and say, hey, you know, this isn't there anymore. But that was just something where it happened while we were in the middle of making it, and it was just crazy, yeah.